A notification pings. Bank alert. Accounts frozen. Balance $0.00. The screen glows for 2 seconds. Then darkness. Tires screech. Engine roars away. The black SUV peels from the curb, exhaust fumes swirling in the morning light. Evan stands alone on the pavement. The fumes curl around his ankles like ghosts. Italian leather shoes. $2,400 retail. Standing inches from a crushed soda can and cigarette butts. 60 seconds ago, I was an heir. 60 seconds later, I'm just a guy with empty pockets. The phone buzzes again. A message from Adrian, no greeting. Emergency card only. We'll discuss. Evan's thumb hovers over the screen. He doesn't reply. He walks toward Weston Hall. Each step echoes against the marble. The hallway stretches ahead. Fluorescent lights. Institutional green walls. The color of waiting rooms and bad news. Before he can process it, a second notification hits. The dean's office, academic risk board meeting. Friday, 3 p.m., retrieve formal notice from Mail Annex B, lower level, academic risk board. The words belong to other students. Scholarship kids who missed deadlines. Athletes who couldn't keep grades up. Not him. His father donated the library's east wing. 2 girls pass. Their eyes flick to his face, then away. Whispers he can't catch. Near the water fountain, Chase Whitman raises his phone. The camera points at Evan. Chase doesn't smirk. He just looks at him, then shakes his head in pity. Evan takes the stairs down. The lower level smells like old paper and dust. Storage rooms, humming electrical closets. At the end of the corridor, a door propped open with a rubber wedge. He stops at the threshold. Inside, amber light spills from a single hanging fixture. Wooden cubbies line the walls, stuffed with envelopes and packages. The air feels different here. Warmer. Older. Like a room that time forgot. A man stands behind the counter. His hands move in a rhythm that never breaks. Letter, slot, letter, slot. He doesn't look up, the stamp hitting paper. Evan clears his throat. I'm here for a notice, Evan Royce. The hands pause. 1 beat. Then continue. Third cubby from the left. Yellow envelope. Evan retrieves it, tears it open. The letter confirms everything. Grades below threshold, attendance flagged, 1 step from suspension. He crumples the paper. Then he just opens his hand and lets it drop, not bothering to check if it hits the bin. It lands on the floor with a soft thud. The stamping stops instantly. The man walks around the counter. His steps are unhurried. He picks up the crumpled paper and smooths it against his palm. Slow, deliberate strokes. Once. Twice. He folds it and places it on the counter. Every document matters. His voice is low. Not angry, not kind, certain. Evan stares at him. Gray hair at the temples, lines around the eyes. A name tag, J. Merrick. You know my name, Evan says. I didn't give it. Jonah Merrick looks at him for the first time. His eyes are dark and steady, like water that runs deep. I've worked this desk long enough to know everyone who walks through that door. Footsteps echo in the hallway behind Evan. Someone passes, glances inside, sees Evan standing in the mail annex, keeps walking, long enough to notice, long enough to remember. Evan doesn't move. Jonah returns to his station, pulls another stack toward him. The rhythm resumes. The amber light holds steady. The dust motes drift like tiny stars. Evan picks up the folded notice. He leaves, but something stays, fading into silence. If you believe one honest word can change a life, keep watching. Evan came back the next morning. He told himself it was to check for another notice, but the truth sat heavier in his chest. The world outside was spinning out of control, and this was the only place standing still. The Mail Annex was empty except for Jonah Merrick. The man stood in the same position. The space here was silent, completely detached from the whispers and prying eyes hunting Evan on the floors above. Evan walked to the counter. Jonah didn't look up. Letter, slot. I need to check if there's anything else for me, Evan said. There isn't. You didn't even look. Jonah's hands paused. He lifted his gaze. You're not here for mail. Evan opened his mouth, then closed it. The silence stretched. I don't know why I'm here, he admitted. That's more honest than most people manage. Evan leaned against the counter, his eyes drifting to the shelf near the window. Envelopes stacked neatly, bound with rubber bands, covered in a fine layer of dust. What are those? Letters never picked up, Jonah said. But I keep them, because they still belong to someone. Evan stared at the stack. You could just throw them out. No one would know. Jonah set down the letter in his hand. I would know. The words landed hard. Evan looked away, focusing on Jonah's uniform. Worn at the cuffs, but pressed sharp. An eerie level of care. How long have you worked here? Jonah didn't answer. He resumed his rhythm. I'm trying to have a conversation, Evan snapped, his patience fraying. No, Jonah said, his voice even. You're trying to understand me without offering anything yourself. That's not conversation. That's extraction. Evan froze. Extraction. The word stuck like a splinter in his pride. Sometimes the quietest room holds the most truth, Jonah said, almost to himself. Evan frowned. That sounds like something from a self-help book. Jonah's mouth twitched. You can fake effort, not growth. Remember that when you walk into your board meeting. Evan stared at him, suspicious. How do you know about the meeting? Jonah stopped stamping. He pointed to a stack of paperwork on the desk. I'm the one who stamped your summons this morning, and the 3 debt notices from the bank last week. Paper doesn't lie, Evan. You're drowning. Evan stiffened. He felt completely exposed. His arrogance flared up to cover the fear. I'll handle it, Evan said, turning to leave. I'll call my father's lawyers. They'll fix it like always. The lawyers work for your father, not you. Jonah's voice rang out, stopping Evan in his tracks. Evan spun back, angry. So what? Jonah stepped out from behind the counter. For the first time, he dominated the space. Not with authority, but with experience. When you walk into that room, they won't ask your father. They will ask you, if we take away the Royce check, who are you? Why do you deserve that seat? Jonah paused, his eyes drilling into Evan. Lawyers can't answer that. Money can't answer that. And right now, neither can you. The room fell silent. Evan stood rooted to the floor. His throat felt tight. He searched his mind for a retort, a defense, anything. But there was only empty space. Jonah was right. If you stripped away the name, he was nobody. It was the fear he had been running from his whole life. Jonah turned his back, ready to return to work. He was done. Teach me. Jonah stopped, but didn't turn around. Teach me. Evan's voice was shaky but firm. Teach me how to answer that question. Jonah studied him for a long moment, like a surgeon assessing whether a patient could survive the surgery. There's a condition. Name it. Come back tomorrow, early, and leave your name at the door. Evan arrived at 6:14 a.m. The hallway was dark, except for the light leaking from under the Mail Annex door. He hesitated, hand raised to knock, then pushed it open. Jonah was already there. He stood behind the counter with a black notebook in his hands. Simple, unlined, the kind sold in bulk at office supply stores. A cheap ballpoint pen rested on top. "You're early," Jonah said. "You said early." Jonah nodded once. He walked around the counter, set the notebook on the edge nearest Evan, and stepped back. "This is yours now. You write in it every morning. Not when you feel like it. Every morning." Evan picked up the notebook. The cover was plain, rough to the touch. No logo, no embossing. It felt light, yet strangely heavy in his hands. "What am I supposed to write?" "Whatever you're avoiding." Evan almost laughed. A defensive reflex. "That's not exactly specific." "No," Jonah agreed, his voice dry. "It isn't." He returned to his station and began sorting the first stack of the day. The rhythm resumed. Letter, slot, stamp, thump, thump. Evan stood there, notebook in hand, waiting for more instruction. None came. "That's it?" he asked. "Just write?" Jonah didn't look up, his hands moving swiftly. "Your name stays outside this room. When you walk through that door, you're not Royce. You're not your father's son. You're not your money or your car or your reputation." He paused, the stamp hitting the paper with a sharp crack. "Bring only your mind. The rest is noise." Evan felt the words land somewhere deep, a place he usually kept locked tight with sarcasm. "And if I don't want to do this? Then leave. The door works both ways." Evan looked at the door. Freedom was right there. He could walk out, go home, sleep, and ignore everything. But then the image of the board meeting flashed in his mind. The humiliation. He sat down at the small wooden table near the window. He opened the notebook to the first page. The pen felt awkward in his grip. He'd typed everything for years. Writing by hand was slower, more exposed. No backspace, no autocorrect. He wrote a sentence. "I shouldn't be here." He crossed it out. He wrote again. "The meeting is bullshit. I can handle it." He looked at the words. They were a lie. He scratched them out until the black ink tore through the paper. 20 minutes passed. The page was filled with fragments, excuses, the kind of flowery, empty sentences he used in his admissions essays. Nothing was real. Just the noise in his head spilling onto the paper. Jonah appeared beside him. He looked at the messy page, then pulled a red pen from his pocket. He didn't read every word. He just saw the pretense. A single sharp red line slashed diagonally across the entire page. "Again," he said. Evan looked up, face flushing hot. "I wrote what you wanted." "You wrote what you thought I wanted to read," Jonah interrupted. "You're trying to sell me a version of yourself." "I'm not buying." Evan stared at the red line. It cut through his ego like a wound. "Then what the hell do you want?" Jonah returned the red pen to his pocket. "The truth, no matter how ugly it is." He walked back to the counter. Evan turned to a fresh page. His hand trembled, fingers cramping from gripping the pen too hard. He took a deep breath, the smell of old paper filling his lungs. He pressed the pen down. This time he didn't try to write literature. He didn't try to sound smart. "I'm scared," he wrote. The letters were jagged. "I don't know who I am without a credit card. My father looks at me like a bad investment. And the worst part is, I think he's right." He wrote, not an essay, but disjointed, painful sentences. He wrote about the terrifying silence in the massive mansion, about how he hated the sound of his own footsteps because they sounded lonely. When he stopped, the page was messy, smudged, but it was the most real thing he had ever created. Jonah didn't come to check. He kept sorting mail, like a metronome for mindfulness. At 7:45 a.m., Evan closed the notebook. He felt exhausted, like he'd just run a marathon. "Same time tomorrow?" he asked, his voice hoarse. Jonah nodded. Evan stood up, reached into his pocket, and pulled out his wallet. It was a natural reflex. When someone provides a service, he pays. It was how he kept control. He didn't like owing people. "Let me pay you. For your time. For the notebook." Jonah didn't turn around. The stamping continued steadily. "Put it away." "No, I'm serious. I don't want to owe anything." Jonah stopped. He turned around, staring at the expensive leather wallet in Evan's hand. "You think you can buy your way to even ground here?" Jonah asked, his voice dropping lower. "Your money has no currency in this room, Evan. In here we trade in something else." Evan stood there, wallet hovering in midair. He felt small. "Then why help me?" Evan asked, lowering his hand. "You get nothing out of this." Jonah turned back to the mail, picking up a weathered envelope. "Because someone helped me once," he said, his voice as light as falling dust. "And back then, I didn't have a dime in my pocket to pay him either." Evan put the wallet away. He realized he had just entered a kind of debt that money couldn't settle. He left through the side exit. Near the stairwell, he passed a girl, Priya Sharma. She glanced at him, then at the closed door of the Mail Annex. Her eyes narrowed, full of suspicion. She didn't say anything, but the look logged everything. Evan ducked his head, walking faster. Behind him, the thump-thump still echoed, steady and patient. The following days didn't get any easier. If Evan thought the honesty of that first morning was the finish line, he was wrong. It was just the starting gun. By day 3, Evan's handwriting was jagged with anger. He wrote about how his father communicated through lawyers, about how Adrian froze accounts instead of picking up the phone, about the walls his father built and called protection. Jonah appeared beside him, the red pen slashing through line after line without mercy. "This is blame," Jonah said, his voice calm but piercing. "Where is your part in this?" Evan's jaw tightened, the pen digging into the paper. "I didn't freeze my own accounts." Jonah set the red pen down on the table. "Understanding begins when excuses end." He walked away, leaving Evan staring at the red marks that cut through his words like open wounds. The frustration peaked on day 4. Unable to stand the pressure of the rhythmic stamping any longer, a sound that felt like water torture, Evan threw his pen across the room. It clattered against the wall, hit the floor, and rolled under a cubby shelf. Jonah didn't flinch. He walked over, slowly retrieved the pen, placed it back on the table in front of Evan, and returned to sorting mail. Thump, thump, the message was clear. "You can lose your temper, but the work still gets done." Evan picked up the pen, grit his teeth, and kept writing. As the second week began, a new rhythm took hold. At 6:15 a.m., while the school hallways were still pitch black, the Mail Annex glowed with amber light. Arriving before the sun became an anchor for Evan in the middle of a storm. Walk, sit, write, the notebook filled up. Some days, Jonah crossed out half the page. Other days, only a word. "You're getting closer," Jonah observed on day 9. Evan felt it in his chest, a small light, faint but warm, flickering on. The shift began to bleed into other parts of his life. In economics class, when the professor asked about market behavior, Evan raised his hand. He didn't give the perfect textbook answer. He gave a perspective forged in the quiet of the early mornings. The professor paused, nodding slightly. "Interesting perspective, Mr. Royce." It was the first time in months a teacher had looked at him without suspicion or pity. But the real test came in week 3. Jonah read through the notebook and noticed a glaring omission. "You write about everything," he said, circling a paragraph in red. "Except your mother." Evan stiffened. He had mentioned her once. In passing, about the house feeling empty. Nothing more. "I don't want to." "You've been walking in circles around her for 3 weeks. Jonah's voice was quiet but unyielding. "Every bit of resentment you hold toward your father starts there. You can keep running, or you can walk through it." The room seemed to shrink, pressing against Evan's chest. "What's the point?" His voice cracked. "She's gone. The point is that you are still here, and you're carrying that grief like a stone." A heavy silence settled over the room. Evan picked up the pen, his hand trembling. He began to write, not about the death, but about the loneliness of those left behind. The hospital room smelled like antiseptic. Her hand was cold. But the thing that hurt the most to write wasn't her leaving. It was the image of his father. Dad stood by the window, his back turned to the bed. He wouldn't look at her, not even when the monitor flatlined. At the funeral, people told me to be strong like him. But he wasn't strong. He just froze. The words came out ugly, uneven, bleeding onto the page. Evan wrote about the moment he realized he had lost both parents that day. When he stopped, his eyes burned. He didn't wipe them. Jonah read the page. This time he didn't reach for the red pen. He didn't make a single mark. "Now," Jonah said softly, "we can actually begin." That night, Evan sat in his room, the glow of his phone illuminating his tired face. He opened a message to his father. "I'm trying." His thumb hovered over the send button. He thought about Adrian's voice. Flat, distant, allergic to emotion. A text message couldn't bridge a 10-year gap. He deleted the message and turned off the screen. An action without words, but decisive. At school, the whispers had turned into open laughter. The rumors spread like wildfire. In the senior lounge, Chase played a video loud enough for the room to hear. Footage of Evan walking into the Mail Annex at dawn. A cheap trap beat overlaid. The caption, "Broke heir turns janitor." The room exploded in laughter as Evan walked in, but Evan didn't lower his head. He didn't stop. In his notebook that morning, he had written a line that Jonah had underlined twice in acknowledgement. "The people who are laughing have never had to rebuild themselves. Their noise is not my problem." He carried that sentence like an invisible shield, walking straight through the crowd. The laughter faded behind him, replaced by the familiar rhythm in his mind. The video spread faster than Evan expected. By third period, it lived everywhere. In group chats, on screens half hidden under desks, in the laughter that stopped abruptly when he walked past. Chase had added a second version, a voiceover mocking Evan, exaggerated and whiny. "Please, Mr. Janitor, teach me how to be smart." Vince DeLuca cornered him after lunch. "Heard you changed tactics." Vince leaned against the water fountain, blocking the path. Evan didn't slow down. I thought you were prepping to take over the empire. Vince sneered, his pity fake and sharp. Turns out you're training to be a grunt? Careful, Evan. Poverty is contagious. Evan's hands curled into fists, but he kept walking. In his notebook that morning, Jonah had written a single line in the margin. Not a correction. An addition. Dignity is not given. It is practiced. Evan repeated the words in his head until Vince's laughter dissolved into nothing. The library was quiet. Late afternoon light slanted through the tall windows. A laptop slammed onto the table across from Evan. Priya Sharma stood there, messenger bag hanging off one shoulder, jaw tight. She didn't sit. She slid the laptop toward him. Aggressive, almost a challenge. People say you're actually trying now. Her voice was sharp. Prove it. Evan didn't look up from his textbook. I'm studying, Priya. My capstone essay is garbage. Morrison tore it apart. She says it's structurally incoherent. Priya pushed the laptop closer. Fix it, or tell me the rumors are fake. Evan finally looked at her. 3 months ago, Priya had written an article about legacy admissions. She didn't name him. Everyone knew anyway. Why me? Because I watched you in Whitmore's class last week. That answer about behavioral economics. She hesitated. It was good. Actually good. Evan closed his textbook. Read me your thesis. Priya sat. She read aloud. The words were dense, ambitious, overstuffed with ideas that didn't connect. You're saying 3 things at once, Evan said. Pick one. Make it the spine. Everything else either supports it or gets cut. Morrison said the same thing, but then listen to her. Evan leaned forward. If you only had 10 words, what would they be? Priya opened her mouth. Closes it. They worked for an hour. Evan didn't write a single word for her. He asked questions. Why does this point go here? What are you actually trying to prove? And he watched her find the answers herself. The same method. Jonah's method. By the time they finished, Priya had a new outline. Her shoulders had dropped 2 inches. Thanks, she said, packing up. She paused at the edge of the table. That video Chase made, it's garbage. Everyone with a brain knows it. Everyone watched it, though. Watching and believing aren't the same thing. She slung her bag over her shoulder. For what it's worth, you're not the same person you were last semester. She left before he could respond. The next morning, Evan found something new in the Mail Annex, a small envelope, unmarked, resting in the corner of the table where he always sat. He picked it up. The paper was cheap, the kind from school supply bins. He opened it slowly. Inside, a single sheet. Loopy handwriting, the kind taught in elementary schools, careful and round. Thank you, Mr. M, for making me feel like I matter. No signature, no name. Evan looked at Jonah, who was still sorting mail, his face revealing nothing. Did you see who left this? Jonah didn't turn around. People leave things. It's a mailroom. Evan read the note again. He thought about the students who passed through this room every day, the ones no one saw. He folded the note and tucked it into his notebook. In the main office, Dr. Callahan leaned against the reception counter. Who is Merrick? He asked Principal Hartman. The guy in the Mail Annex. Students keep mentioning him. Hartman's expression hardened. She stared at her computer screen, where the video mocking Evan was paused on a clear frame. Jonah teaching. He's a clerk, she said coldly. Nothing more. She picked up the desk phone, pressing the intercom button hard. But I don't pay him to teach. Get him up to my office. Now. The door closed behind her. Principal Hartman's office smelled like leather and old coffee. Jonah stood in front of her desk, hands clasped behind his back, posture straight. He hadn't been offered a seat. The morning light cut through the blinds in thin, accusatory lines. "I've received complaints," Hartman said. She didn't look up from the folder in front of her. "From faculty, from parents. They're asking why a mail clerk is spending time with students before classes begin." Jonah said nothing. "You were hired to sort mail, Mr. Merrick, not to teach, not to counsel, not to—" She glanced at the folder. "Hold private sessions in the annex." "I sort mail," Jonah said. "If students come early and want to sit quietly, I don't chase them out." Hartman's eyes lifted. Evan Royce. His father is a significant donor to this institution. "Do you understand what happens if Adrian Royce decides we've been negligent? I understand the boy was failing. And now?" Jonah's expression didn't change. "Now he shows up." Hartman closed the folder. She leaned back in her chair, studying him the way she might study a problem she hadn't anticipated. "You're not hired to inspire anyone," she said. "You're hired to do a job. Do only that job. Are we clear?" Jonah held her gaze for a moment longer than was comfortable. "Clear," he said. He turned and walked out. That evening, the Royce house was silent. Evan sat in the dining room, a room designed for 12 but set for 2. His father entered at exactly 7 p.m., still wearing his suit from the office, his phone in his hand. Adrian didn't greet him. He sat at the head of the table, scrolled through something on his screen, then set the phone face down. "I know what you've been doing," Adrian said. Evan's stomach dropped. "Your assistant Whitmore called the school. She mentioned a mail clerk. Said you've been spending mornings in some basement room, taking instruction from a janitor." Adrian's voice was flat, clinical. "Is this true?" "He's not a janitor. He works in the— I don't care what he is." Adrian's hand came down on the table. The silverware rattled. "I built an empire for you. I gave you every advantage, every tutor, every school, every connection. And this is what you choose? To humiliate yourself in front of the entire institution?" Evan's throat tightened. "I wasn't learning anything before. I was just showing up. There's a difference. The difference is optics. The difference is what people see." Adrian leaned forward. "Do you know what Chase Whitman's father asked me at the club last week? He asked if my son was taking charity lessons from the help. He laughed, Evan. He laughed at our name." Evan stood. His chair scraped against the floor. "I don't care about the name." Adrian's face went cold. "Then you don't understand what it cost to build it. You built a cage." The words came out before Evan could stop them. "You built something for yourself and called it a legacy. But he—" Evan's voice caught, then hardened. "He sees who I actually am. You just see an investment." Adrian stood slowly. He was taller than Evan, broader, and in this light he looked like a statue, carved from stone, incapable of bending. "You embarrass this family," Adrian said. "You use money to control everything around you," Evan shot back, looking his father in the eye. "He taught me how to live without your shadow. That's the difference." The silence between them stretched like a wire about to snap. Adrian picked up his phone. His voice dropped low, more dangerous than a shout. "I'm giving you 24 hours. End this charade immediately. If you don't, I will personally call the board on Monday morning, and that man will be on the street. Don't test me, Evan." Evan didn't answer. He knew his father didn't bluff. Adrian walked out. His footsteps echoed down the hallway, then disappeared. Evan stood alone in the dining room. His hands were shaking. On the sideboard near the window, a stack of mail waited. Bills, invitations, the usual noise of wealth. One envelope caught his eye. Thick cream paper, embossed seal. He picked it up. Horizon Academic Showcase. Invitation to compete. The showcase was the school's most prestigious event. Students presented original work in front of a panel of judges, alumni, and donors. Winners received scholarships, recognition, opportunities that could shape careers. Evan had never considered entering. He looked at the letter for a long time. Then he folded it and put it in his pocket. Have you ever met someone valuable that the system overlooked? Remember, dignity doesn't need a title. 6:12 a.m. Evan walks the familiar route, down the stairs, past the storage rooms. The electrical closet hums its usual hum. The hallway is dark, no light under the Mail Annex door. He stops. His heart skips a beat. He rushes to the door, pounding on the wood. Once. Twice. Jonah? His voice cracks, loud and lonely in the quiet basement. No answer. No footsteps approaching. He pushes the handle, his breathing coming fast and shallow. Empty. The cubbies are still there, stuffed with letters, waiting for hands that will never come. The counter is clean. The stamp rests in its usual place. But Jonah's corner, the shelf where he kept his red pens, the spot where he always stood, is bare. A printed notice hangs on the wall. Tape at the corners, already curling. Mail Annex temporarily reassigned. All inquiries to main office. Evan reads it twice. He rips the paper off the wall, crumpling it in his fist, then smooths it out again against the counter, hoping the words might change. But the words stay there. Cold. Final. The main office smells like coffee and anxiety. Mrs. Crane looks up from her computer, her face a mask of practiced neutrality. I'm looking for Mr. Merrick, Evan says, his voice trembling. The mail clerk. Her fingers pause on the keyboard. One beat. Two. Mr. Merrick has been reassigned indefinitely. Reassigned where? That's all I can tell you. Evan leans over the counter, eyes flashing with anger. He didn't do anything wrong. He was just... Mr. Royce. Her voice drops, her eyes darting around the room. I suggest you return to class. By noon, the video resurfaces. Chase's new version includes screenshots from a school newsletter. Jonah's employee photo circled in red. Caption, update. The janitor guru got fired. Comments multiply. Laughing emojis, mocking speculation. One comment. Guess Rich Boy's daddy made some calls. Evan sits in the library, phone in hand, reading every word. His chest feels hollow, scraped out. He thinks about his father's threat. I'll have that man reassigned or removed. He thinks about Hartman's warning. You're not hired to teach. He thinks about every morning in the annex, the red ink, the silence. The rhythm of the stamp that made him feel like time still moved forward. Gone. That evening, Evan returns. The door is unlocked. The lights are off. He fumbles for the switch. The amber glow returns. Familiar. Warm. Unchanged. Everything looks the same, except for one thing. On the table where Evan always sat, a notebook waits. Not his notebook. Older, the cover worn soft from years of handling. Jonah's notebook. Evan's hand reaches for it. His fingers tremble. He opens it. Pages filled with careful handwriting. Notes, observations, fragments of thought. Some dated, some addressed to no one. Near the middle, something tucked between pages. A newspaper clipping, yellowed at the edges. He unfolds it slowly. The headline is 12 years old. Professor Merrick suspended after ethics complaint. The article is short. A tenure dispute at a small college. A professor who challenged the administration over admissions practices. Accused of violating protocol, case dropped, but damage done, no reinstatement, no appeal. Final line? Dr. Jonah Merrick could not be reached for comment. Evan sits down. The room is silent. The unclaimed letters watch from their shelf. Patient, faithful, still waiting. Jonah had been a professor. He had fought for something and lost everything. And instead of disappearing, he came here. To a basement, to a mailroom, to the quietest room in the building. Sometimes the quietest room holds the most truth. Now Evan understands. He opens his own notebook. He writes about the annex, the red ink and the mantras and the mornings that changed him. He writes about Jonah's hands, steady, certain, and the way the man never asked for credit. He writes about dignity without title, wisdom that couldn't be bought. The words pour out. Messy, raw, unpolished. True. The clock on the wall reads 11:47 p.m. when his hand finally stops. Something catches the amber light. A letter opener. Old, brass-handled, tarnished with age. It rests on top of Jonah's notebook, placed there deliberately, not forgotten, but left behind. Evan picks it up. It feels heavier than it looks. In his pocket, the Horizon invitation waits. Still sealed, still untouched. He pulls it out. The letter opener slides through the envelope. Clean, decisive. The deadline is in 3 days. Evan looks at the pages he's written. At the notebook Jonah left. At the letter opener that opened the way forward. He folds his pages carefully and places them inside the Horizon envelope. Tomorrow, he will submit. Tonight, he sits alone in the amber light, holding the tools his mentor left behind, letting the silence settle around him. No thump-thump, just the absence of it. Heavy, present, waiting to be filled. The auditorium holds its breath. 300 seats, everyone filled. Faculty line the walls like sentinels. Alumni cluster in the reserved section, donor pins catching the stage lights. Camera crews set up in the back, red recording lights blinking. The Horizon Academic Showcase, the school's most public performance. Evan stands backstage, pages trembling in his hands. Through the curtain gap, he sees the front rows. Board members with careful smiles. Principal Hartman, spine rigid, face unreadable. Third row, center seat, Adrian Royce. His father came. Evan doesn't know what that means. A stagehand touches his shoulder. 2 minutes. He looks at his pages one last time, rewritten 4 times since submitting. Cut, tightened, stripped to the spine. The only version that feels true. Our next presenter, Evan Royce. Polite applause. Evan walks to the podium, sets his pages down, looks out. The lights are bright enough to erase faces, shapes and outlines, the suggestion of attention. He opens his mouth. Nothing comes out. The silence stretches. 3 seconds. 5. Someone coughs. Evan closes his eyes. He thinks about the annex, amber light, the rhythm of the stamp, Jonah's voice. You can fake effort, not growth. He opens his eyes. You can silence a title. His voice is rough, unpolished. But you can't silence a truth. 3 months ago I was failing. Not just academically, though that was part of it. I was failing at something harder to measure. He pauses. I had stopped trying to understand anything. I had stopped believing I needed to. Then I met someone. He worked in the Mail Annex, the room in the basement where no one goes unless they have to. He sorted letters. He stamped envelopes. He did a job that most people consider invisible. But he saw things no one else saw. He knew every student who walked through his door, not because he read files, but because he paid attention. His voice steadies. He believed that every person who entered that room mattered, even if they didn't believe it themselves. He taught me something I couldn't learn in any classroom. He taught me that dignity isn't something you're given. It's something you practice every day, even when no one is watching. Especially when no one is watching. This school removed him. They called it reassignment, but we all know what it was. A murmur ripples through the crowd. A punishment for doing something that wasn't in his job description. Caring about students who needed help. Evan pulls the folded note from his pocket. I'm not here to ask for his job back. That's not my decision. He holds up the note. I'm here to say what I should have said weeks ago. This was left in the mailroom. It says, "Thank you, Mr. M, for making me feel like I matter." He sets it on the podium. I don't know who wrote it, but I know they meant it, and I know there are others. His name is Jonah Merrick. He was a professor once. He lost that title for standing up for something he believed in, and instead of giving up, he came here. He found a quiet room and kept teaching, not because anyone paid him to, because he couldn't stop. You can take away someone's title. You can reassign them, silence them, pretend they don't exist. He pauses. But you can't take away what they gave. That stays. Evan steps back from the podium. Silence hangs over the room, heavy, suffocating. No one claps. Eyes dart toward the front row. They look at Principal Hartman, who is whispering furiously to an aide. They look at Evan Royce, who sits frozen like a block of ice. To clap now isn't just applause. It's choosing a side. Then, the sharp sound of a chair scraping back. In the middle section, Priya Sharma stands. She doesn't look around. She looks straight at Evan and claps. Once. Twice. Loud and defiant. A second later, a shy freshman in the back row stands. Then a group of students. The ones who used to sneak into the mailroom. The applause breaks like a dam. From students to alumni, and finally, the faculty. The entire room rises. The noise becomes deafening, a release of held breath. Only one person remains seated. Evan Royce sits stone still. He doesn't clap. He doesn't look at his son. He stares into the middle distance, his face a mask of ice amidst the roaring crowd. Evan doesn't look at his father. He looks at the back of the room. A figure stands near the exit, half in shadow. Gray hair, pressed uniform, hands clasped. Jonah doesn't step forward, doesn't wave, doesn't acknowledge the moment. He just watches, and that is enough. The letters arrived the next morning. Hartman found them stacked outside her office. 43 envelopes, hand-delivered before dawn. Students, parents, 2 faculty members. All of them asking the same thing. Bring Jonah Merrick back. She read the first 5, then the 10th. By the 20th, she stopped counting. The school board convened an emergency session that afternoon. Evan wasn't invited to the meeting, but he heard about it within the hour. Priya had sources everywhere. They're offering him a position, she said, catching Evan in the hallway between classes. Community learning advisor. It's new, created just for this. Will he take it? Priya shrugged. No one knows. He hasn't responded yet. Evan thought about Jonah's words, spoken weeks ago in the amber light of the annex. Money has no currency here. He wasn't sure a title would change that. That evening, a black sedan pulled up to the Mail Annex. Evan Royce stepped out. He stood at the entrance for a long moment, looking at the door as if it might bite him. Then he pushed it open and walked inside. Jonah was there, not sorting mail, just sitting at the small wooden table near the window. The notebook lay closed in front of him. The unclaimed letters watched from their shelf. Adrian stopped 3 feet from the table. "Mr. Merrick," he said. Jonah looked up. His expression didn't change. "Mr. Royce?" The silence between them stretched. Adrian shifted his weight, a small movement, barely visible, but enough. "I came to..." He stopped, started again. "My son spoke at the showcase. I heard. He said things. About you. About what you did for him." Jonah waited. Adrian reached into his jacket and pulled out an envelope. Thick, cream-colored. He set it on the table between them. "This is a check," Adrian said. "Enough so you never have to take orders from a principal again." Jonah looked at the envelope, but didn't touch it. "Why?" he asked. Adrian's jaw tightened. The question seemed to cost him his last shred of pride. "Because my son was drowning," he said quietly. "And I didn't see it. You did." He pointed at the check, his voice regaining the decisiveness of a businessman. "I don't care if you use it to open a school, rent an office, or buy this basement. Just keep doing what you do best. By your rules." The words hung in the air. Jonah picked up the envelope. He turned it over in his hands, feeling its weight. "Money serves wisdom," Jonah said, "not the other way around." Adrian nodded once. He didn't smile, but something in his posture shifted. A release, barely perceptible. "Then use it wisely," he said. He turned and walked out. The door clicked shut behind him. The next morning, Hartman called Jonah to her office. The offer was formal this time. Community learning advisor, full benefits, a dedicated space for student mentorship. The board had approved it unanimously. Jonah listened to the entire proposal. He thanked her for the consideration. Then he declined. "I don't need a title to teach," he said. "I never did." Hartman stared at him. "Then what do you want?" Jonah stood. "To keep doing what I was doing, in the place where I was doing it." He walked out before she could respond. That afternoon, Evan found Jonah in the annex, sorting mail as if nothing had changed. "I heard you turned them down," Evan said. Jonah nodded. "Why?" Jonah set down a letter and looked at Evan. Really looked, the way he had that first morning. "Because the room matters," he said. "The quiet matters. The moment someone walks through that door and realizes they're seen. That matters. A title wouldn't make it more true. It would just make it more visible." Evan understood. He sat down at the wooden table. He took the check Adrian had left, smoothed it out, and placed it next to Jonah's worn notebook, the union of resources and wisdom. "Then let's build something else," he said, "something that doesn't need their permission." Jonah's mouth twitched. Not quite a smile, but close. "What do you have in mind?" Evan opened the notebook and drew a large circle around the word Merrick. "A place where dignity doesn't need a title," he said. The ribbon was blue. It stretched across the entrance of what had once been the Mail Annex, now transformed, expanded, alive with light. The wooden cubbies remained, but beside them stood bookshelves, a circle of chairs, a small whiteboard. The amber glow was warmer now, fed by new fixtures that Evan had chosen himself. A brass plaque hung beside the door. Merrick Royce Learning Initiative. Jonah had argued against the name for 3 days. Evan had won by pointing out that Adrian's funding required some acknowledgement, and Jonah's legacy deserved more than anonymity. "It's not about us," Evan had said. "It's about what people see when they walk through that door." Jonah had relented. The opening ceremony was small by design. No press, no cameras, no donor pins. Just students. 30 of them gathered in the hallway, waiting for the doors to open. Some Evan recognized from classes. Others were younger, freshmen and sophomores who had heard about the mailroom through whispers and secondhand stories. Priya stood near the front, her phone in her pocket for once. Principal Hartman had sent a representative, a gesture of institutional acknowledgement that meant more than her absence suggested. And in the back, half hidden by the crowd, Adrian Royce stood with his hands in his pockets. He didn't speak to anyone. He didn't need to. Evan cut the ribbon. The students filed in, finding seats, settling into the space with a mixture of curiosity and reverence. The unclaimed letters still occupied their shelf near the window. Jonah had insisted they stay. "They remind us," he had said, "that some things are worth waiting for." The first session was simple. Jonah stood at the whiteboard and wrote 2 words. Critical writing. "This isn't about grades," he said. "It's not about impressing anyone. It's about learning to say what you mean, and meaning what you say." He handed out notebooks. Plain, black, unlined, the same kind Evan had received 3 months ago. "Your name stays outside," Jonah said. "When you walk through that door, you bring only your mind. The rest is noise." A freshman in the front row raised her hand. "What if we don't know what to write?" Jonah looked at her. "Then write that. Write that you don't know. Write until you find out." The girl nodded slowly. She opened her notebook and picked up her pen. Evan didn't teach that day. He sat in the back, watching. The students wrote in silence. Some filled pages quickly. Others stared at blank paper for long minutes before beginning. Jonah moved between them, pausing occasionally to read over a shoulder, offering a word or a question. No red ink. Not yet. That would come later when trust had been built. After an hour, the session ended. Students filed out, notebooks tucked under arms, conversations already sparking in the hallway. One boy lingered, small, quiet, the kind of kid who disappeared in crowded rooms. He approached Jonah with something in his hand, a letter. "I wrote this last night," the boy said, "for you." Jonah took it. He didn't open it. "Thank you," he said. "I'll read it when the room is quiet." The boy smiled, a small, surprised expression, as if he hadn't expected to be taken seriously. He left. Jonah looked at the envelope for a long moment. This time, he didn't place it on the shelf of lost mail. He folded it carefully and tucked it into his breast pocket, right against his heart. "That one's different," Evan said. Jonah nodded. "They all are." Later, when the room was empty, Adrian approached. He stood in the doorway, looking at the space his money had built and his son had designed. The brass plaque caught the light. "It's good," Adrian said. The words came out stiff, unpracticed. Evan looked at his father. "It's a start." Adrian nodded. For a moment, something softened in his face. Not a smile, but the shadow of one. The first Evan had seen in years. Then he turned and walked away. Priya walked up to Evan as Adrian's footsteps faded. She held up her phone. "Email just came in," she said, her voice excited. "TEDx organizers. They want you as a keynote speaker for the fall event. Topic: Re-educating an heir. What do you think?" Evan looked at the screen, at the subject line glittering with the promise of fame. Then he looked around the room, at the notebooks left on the tables, at Jonah wiping the whiteboard. "Tell them to wait," Evan said, smiling slightly. "I have papers to grade." Priya laughed, putting the phone away. "I knew you'd say that." Jonah sat at the wooden table, the boy's letter in his hands. He unfolded it slowly, carefully, the way he handled everything. His eyes moved across the page. When he finished, he folded it again and pressed it flat against the table. His hand stayed there for a long moment. His eyes were red, but he was smiling. "If this story touched you, share it, so someone out there knows they deserve to be seen."